What would you do if the people you loved most, your own family, left you to sleep in your car, then came back years later, expecting to move into the home you built alone? I'm Olivia Richardson, and 3 years ago I had what most would call a stable life. I was 35, living in a modest apartment outside Dallas, working full-time as a marketing specialist at Market Trend Agency. I wasn't rich, but I had scraped together some comfort, reliable car, decent apartment, even enough to visit my niece and nephew with little gifts on weekends. I thought I had a family that cared, parents who respected my work ethic, a brother who valued our bond. I was wrong. When the recession hit, it came like a silent tidal wave. One Thursday morning, we were ushered into a glass conference room. More than 50 of us and our CEO, with eyes that didn't quite meet ours, read a prepared statement. Massive layoffs. Effective immediately. 2 weeks severance. That was it. I remember clutching the small manila envelope they handed me, walking out with a cardboard box of my desk plant and a framed photo from our last family holiday barbecue before things soured. But I wasn't panicked at first. I had savings. I had experience. I had built a reputation in digital strategy analytics campaign management. How long could it take? I updated my resume, set alarms for job boards, reached out to old coworkers. But every listing I applied to had already been flooded with hundreds of applicants. The marketing industry was drowning, and I was just another name in the wave. 3 months in my savings were gone. My rent was overdue. Swallowing my pride, I made the first of what would be the most painful calls of my adult life. "Dad," I said, my voice catching. "I hate to ask, but I've been laid off. I'm trying everything, but I just need a little help to cover rent next month." There was silence on the line. Then the sound of golf commentary in the background. "Finally, you should have saved better." His voice was colder than I'd ever heard. "Your generation always expects handouts. When I was your age, I worked 3 jobs. Then click." He hung up. Shaken, I called my mother next. Diana was always a little more emotionally expressive, but rarely available when it mattered. "Oh, sweetie," she cooed. "You're in our thoughts and prayers, but we just renovated the kitchen, and your dad's golf fees went up. Have you tried cutting back on those fancy coffee drinks?" I was already drinking instant coffee from a jar. Still, I told myself Michael would come through. My older brother had been in tough spots before, and I had always helped. 3 years ago, I gave him $2,000 for rent and car repairs when he lost a contract. "Live," he said with a sigh. "Maybe if you hadn't wasted money on that apartment and those designer clothes, you'd have something saved up. Some of us have real responsibilities. I have 2 kids to feed." I was stunned. My apartment was modest. My wardrobe was from discount stores and outlet sales. The judgment in his voice made me feel like a reckless teenager, not a woman who had helped him keep his car from being repossessed. Still, I thought, if I just spoke to them all together, face to face, maybe they'd understand. Maybe they'd see how serious things had become. So I asked if I could come to dinner at my parents' house, not to beg, just to lay it all out. One last chance. The evening was burned into my memory. My mother's pot roast, my father's whiskey. The way he kept glancing at his watch as I spoke. I sat at that dining table, heart pounding, as I explained the layoffs, the applications, the looming eviction. "I'm not asking for a handout," I said, "just a short-term loan. 1 or 2 months. I'll pay every cent back with interest." Rebecca, my sister-in-law, rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stick. "This is exactly what happens to irresponsible millennials," she said. "Michael and I keep 6 months of expenses saved. Even with the kids." I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. I knew they'd gotten a down payment gift from her parents. I had received nothing. My mother reached for my hand, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "Maybe it's time you found a husband, dear. A woman your age needs security." And then Michael delivered the line that broke me. "We have real responsibilities, real families to take care of. You only have yourself to worry about." That night, I drove home in silence. No radio, no tears, just the mechanical sound of my turn signal at each intersection. The next morning, a final blow, a text from Michael. "Don't contact us until you've got your life together. We can't keep bailing you out. It's embarrassing." They had never bailed me out, not once. And just like that, I was alone. But the real descent hadn't even begun. You never think it'll be you. Living in your car is something you read about, something you assume happens to people who didn't plan well, whatever that means. Until it's you. Until your feet are freezing in the driver's seat of your own car parked behind a Walmart pretending you're just passing through, not desperately hoping no one notices you're actually living there. 30 days after that humiliating dinner with my family, I found the eviction notice taped to my front door. 72 hours. That's all the time I had to leave the only place I'd called home for the past 4 years. The walk back to my apartment that afternoon felt like a death march. I'd already sold my TV, my jewelry, even the silverware my grandmother left me. I had posted every salvageable item on online marketplaces, hosted a garage sale where people haggled over $5 lamps like they were bargaining over diamonds. But it wasn't enough. And so with what little I had left, some clothes, a few toiletries, my laptop, and the throw blanket my aunt had given me in college, I packed it all into my Toyota Corolla. I parked in a different Walmart lot each night, rotating locations, praying security wouldn't knock on my window. I kept my gym membership, not for workouts, but for the showers. A 29-month lifeline to human dignity. I washed my hair in sinks, brushed my teeth in bathroom stalls, and kept professional clothes hung neatly in my back seat, pressed against plastic like armor. Each day followed a strict survival routine. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., drive to the gym, shower, dress, apply makeup from a compact mirror wedged into the sun visor. 9:00 a.m. Be at the public library when the doors opened. That's where I applied for jobs 15 to 20 per day. It gave me purpose, gave me structure, gave me a way to forget that I was technically homeless. Lunch was protein bars. Dinner was whatever I could grab from the dollar aisle that didn't need refrigeration. I rationed peanut butter like it was gold. There were days I skipped meals altogether just to stretch another 3 days out of a $20 bill. The hardest part wasn't the hunger, or the fear of someone noticing I was sleeping in a car, or the cold that crept through even the thickest sweatshirt. It was the shame, the suffocating, soul-splitting shame of falling so far and still feeling invisible, of texting recruiters with fake confidence while holding back tears, of scrolling past social media posts of family dinners while I curled up in the backseat of my Toyota, listening to rain tap on the roof like it was mocking me. And then one Thursday afternoon, everything changed. I was sitting at my usual corner desk in the public library trying to finish a cover letter for a job I knew I wouldn't get when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and froze. It was Marcus Johnson, a designer I had worked with at Market Trend. "Olivia, is that you?" he asked, smiling like we'd just run into each other at the grocery store. I wanted to disappear. "Oh, hey, Marcus," I managed, forcing a smile. "Long time." He sat down, ignoring the librarian's glare. "How have you been holding up after the layoffs?" I almost cracked. "I've been trying," I said, my throat tight. Marcus leaned in, lowering his voice. "I started a consultancy, just a small thing with 2 others from Market Trend. It's not glamorous and we can't pay what you're used to, but we need someone like you." I blinked. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or hallucinating from stress. "It's part-time," he added quickly. "Flexible hours, we're just getting off the ground. You'd be helping us build from scratch." I nearly laughed. I had 0 income. Even minimum wage sounded luxurious. "When can I start?" I said, maybe too fast. But he just smiled. We moved to a coffee shop around the corner where he explained the setup. I nursed one coffee for 2 hours while listening to every word like it was gospel. That single offer, humble as it was, felt like a rope being thrown into a stormy sea. My first paycheck wasn't enough to get me out of the car entirely, but it gave me hope. With that, I found a tiny studio apartment on the edge of town. It had cracked tiles and questionable plumbing, but it had a door, a lock, a warm shower. I could finally sleep lying flat on a mattress again. But rebuilding wasn't going to be easy, not on that salary. So I did something I never thought I would. I applied for a job bartending at the Rusty Nail, a dive bar with sticky floors and loud jukeboxes. Tony, the owner, was blunt. "You ever bartended, no?" I admitted. He studied me for a moment. "You look like someone who learns fast. You're hired." And just like that, my second job began. By day, I worked on digital campaigns for Marcus. By night, I poured drinks for people who didn't tip and spilled their heartbreaks across the bar. I worked 70 hours a week. Some nights, I walked home with blisters and backaches so bad I couldn't sleep, but I didn't cry. I didn't have time to cry. But then, something began to shift. It's funny how quickly survival can blur into something that almost resembles living. Not thriving, not flourishing, but something that breathes. I kept up the grueling schedule morning shifts, at Marcus's startup evening shifts, at the Rusty Nail 4 hours of sleep if I was lucky. I was functioning on coffee grit and sheer force of will. Some nights I'd cry silently while walking home, not because anything had happened, just because my body didn't know how else to process the exhaustion. But there were small, unexpected gifts. Stephanie Chin was one of them. She worked Friday and Saturday nights at the bar, blunt, sarcastic, and wicked smart. A second-year law student paying for school with tips and hustle. We bonded fast over rude customers, mutual burnout, and a shared love for bad reality TV. One night, after mopping up spilled beer and splitting cold fries in the back room, she mentioned she was apartment hunting. I glanced around our grimy break area and blurted out, "Wanna be roommates." It was impulsive. It was perfect. A month later, we moved into a slightly better apartment, still tiny in a questionable neighborhood, but it had 2 bedrooms, working locks, and a functional shower that didn't alternate between Arctic and lava. And with shared rent for the first time since losing my job, I could afford basic health insurance. Not a luxury plan, but enough that I could see a doctor without calculating the cost against groceries. It was a turning point. I poured myself into my job at Marcus's company, now officially named Horizon Marketing Solutions. I learned every new tool, took on every ugly project, stayed late when no one else would. I watched Marcus watching me, and 6 months in, he gave me a raise. "You're the engine here, Olivia," he said one afternoon. "This place runs because of you." That night, I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. I wasn't invisible anymore. Meanwhile, I pushed myself further. During those rare nights off, I took free online courses, digital analytics, social media strategy, advanced ad targeting. I became certified in platforms I used to only dabble in. Each line added to my resume felt like a brick in the foundation I was rebuilding. One afternoon, Stephanie and I collapsed onto our thrift store couch after a long day splitting takeout tacos while she scrolled her phone. "You ever think about what you've done?" she asked, mouth full, like, "You rebuilt your life. From nothing. From a car." I laughed, but it caught in my throat, because I hadn't. I hadn't really looked at how far I'd come. I was too busy moving. The biggest shock came a year to the day after I was evicted. There was no celebration, no milestone party, just me sipping cheap coffee in our apartment, about to deliver a pitch for a nonprofit campaign we'd submitted to a regional competition. The project had been my baby, a low-budget but high-impact social campaign that boosted donations by over 300%. It was gritty, heartfelt, and honest. And to my total shock, we won. The awards ceremony was a blur. I stood on stage in a borrowed dress, blinking into spotlights as Marcus beamed in the front row. "This award," I said, voice shaking, "goes to everyone who's ever had to start over, who's ever been told they were on their own. You're not." In the crowd, someone stood, came forward, extended a hand. His name was Nathan Taylor, and he was the regional marketing director for a bank that partnered with nonprofits. That campaign, he said, it cut through the noise. It felt real. We ended up talking for over 2 hours long after the tables were cleared. His voice was calm, his questions intentional, his presence steady. When the conversation inevitably drifted to family, I gave my practiced answer: family's complicated. Nathan didn't blink. "Same here," he said simply. "I was raised by my grandparents. Parents weren't interested in parenting. Family's not about blood. It's about who shows up. I didn't know it then, but that moment cracked something open in me. It was the beginning of something softer, warmer, a slow-burn companionship that didn't ask me to shrink. And while all of this was happening, the career rebuild, the emotional healing, the chance at real connection. My biological family stayed silent. No calls, no texts, no check-ins. Until one spring morning, 3 years after they vanished, they arrived at my door. I just brewed my morning coffee light roast, 2 sugars splash of oat milk, a small ritual I'd come to cherish in my new routine. My home was small but mine, bought with sweat. Bartending tips, marketing contracts, countless sleepless nights. It had a front porch with chipped paint wildflowers in the yard and creaky floorboards that sang under my every step. It wasn't a palace, but it was earned. So when the doorbell rang that spring morning, I assumed it was a delivery. I padded barefoot to the door mug in hand, and I froze. My entire family was standing there. Dad, Mom, Michael, my brother, his wife Lacey, their 2 kids who I barely recognized. They'd grown so much. And beside them, 3 massive suitcases and a pink unicorn duffel bag. I blinked. Olivia. Mom beamed like nothing had happened. "You look well, I didn't move." Didn't open the screen door. Michael stepped forward casually, surveying the porch. "Nice place," he said, peering behind me. Bigger than I expected, honestly. My fingers tightened on the mug. "I wasn't expecting visitors," I managed. "Oh, we thought we'd surprise you," Lacey chirped, hauling the unicorn bag up the steps. "We were driving through town, spring break for the kids. Figured it's time for a little family reconnection." Michael chuckled. "Besides," he added, "you don't even have a family to worry about." "We'll take the house." Silence. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it in my teeth. Will What he grinned like he'd offered me a gift. "I mean, it makes sense. You're always working. No one living here but you, and we're going through a tough patch. Lost the lease on our place, schools are overcrowded, you know how it is." I stared. He actually thought this house, my house, was up for grabs, like I was a safety net they'd forgotten about until it was convenient. "You want to move in?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Well, Dad interjected just for a while. We figured we could help each other. Family supporting family again." Now that was rich. The same family who sat stone-faced while I begged for help on eviction day. The same people who vanished while I lived in a car, who ghosted me for 3 years. Suddenly, Mom spotted the necklace I was wearing, the gold chain with a tiny opal pendant, a gift from Nathan on my 35th birthday. "Oh, Olivia," she said sweetly. "You're seeing someone. We should have dinner while we're in town, catch up, and maybe he can help us get resettled, too." Lacey chimed in again. "Do you have guest rooms? Or should the kids sleep in the living room?" It was surreal. Like watching entitled strangers try to squat in a museum you built with your bare hands. And then Michael said it again. More slowly this time, like I'd somehow missed the generosity of his proposal. "Don't overthink it. It's not like you need all this space. You're still single, right? No kids. Let's be practical." I opened the screen door slowly. Not to let them in, to walk outside and stand eye to eye with them. "Let me get this straight," I said calmly. "You came here uninvited with bags packed no notice after ignoring me for 3 years, and you think you're entitled to my home?" Michael bristled. "It's not about entitlement, it's about family." The word tasted rotten now. "You said I didn't belong," I reminded them. "You watched me lose everything and you did nothing. You don't get to waltz back in now that I have something." Dad frowned. "Olivia, don't be dramatic. This is what family does. We forgive, we help, we move on." I shook my head. "You want help? There's a Motel 6 2 blocks down. I hear they have a spring break discount." And with that, I turned, walked back inside, locked the door. I stood in the hallway, pulse racing. For a second, I expected banging, protests, a tantrum on the porch, but there was only silence. Then, shuffling. The creak of suitcase wheels dragging across the sidewalk, a car door slamming, the soft hum of an engine. They were gone. I sank to the floor, and I laughed. Not bitter, not angry, just disbelief, relief. I had just shut the door on my past, literally, and as I sat there, the laughter gave way to something else, clarity. It was time. Time to speak. Time to tell the truth. Not for revenge, not for validation, but because other people needed to hear it. It started as a letter I wrote to myself. One quiet night after the doorbell incident, I sat at my desk, an old thing salvaged from a flea market full of dents and history, and just let it pour out. I didn't write it with any plan. I just needed to breathe through my fingers. I called it "To the Girl in the Car." I wrote about that night, the eviction, the silence in the driveway, the taste of old grief. I wrote about what it felt like to lose not just a job or a home, but the illusion that family meant safety. And then I wrote about the rebuild, the bar shifts, the couch surfing, the mornings when I thought I couldn't make it but still got up anyway. And I ended it with this: you will not be who they said you were. You will not stay broken. You will build. And one day they will show up at your door and realize you didn't wait for them to believe in you. You became everything on your own. I posted it anonymously on Medium. No name, no photos, just raw words. I closed my laptop and went to sleep. By morning, it had 12,000 views. By lunch, it was 80,000. By the end of the week, it had crossed 3.1 million reads. Emails started pouring in, from strangers, from women who had been kicked out for choosing art over law school, from queer teens living in their cars, from men disowned for being too soft, from anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. People were quoting the line, "You didn't wait for them to believe in you," like it was gospel. The New York Times reached out for an interview, then The Cut, then NPR. It was overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying. And then my old firm's name started showing up. In the comment sections, people had pieced it together. The industry wasn't that big. Someone had found an old post I'd written during my marketing days and linked the dots. Then came the email from the new VP of PR at that firm. The subject line, "Urgent Medium Post." It read, "We request that you remove the post immediately." While it is not explicitly named, the connection to our company is becoming damaging to our reputation. This constitutes defamation by implication. Our legal team will follow up. I stared at it, and then I laughed. Defamation from the people who cut me off, discarded me, erased me. You can't defame someone with the truth. Nathan came over that night, found me pacing. I showed him the email. He read it once, then looked at me with those calm, grounded eyes. "Let them send whatever they want," he said. "You didn't name them. You told your story. That's not illegal. That's healing." Still, I felt the knot form again, that childhood fear, that they still had power. But Stephanie, always my firebrand, texted me one line that snapped it. "They don't want the world to see who they are. But the world already does." I didn't take the post down. I updated it. I added a section, an open letter to corporate systems that discard people like trash the second they become inconvenient. I named no one, but I exposed everything. And people kept sharing it. It landed me speaking gigs, first small panels at women's co-working spaces, then marketing conferences, then TEDx. At one of them, a woman came up crying. She said she printed the letter and taped it inside her car. She'd been living in it for 5 weeks after being cut off by her family. That letter gave her the strength to walk into a shelter and ask for help. I realized then, this wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us who had been discarded. And that meant one thing: they could no longer touch me. But it didn't stop them from trying, because weeks later, I got another email. Not from the firm, from Michael. The subject line, "Family Meeting. Let's talk." I should have known. When Michael texted me, It wasn't even from the same number he'd used years ago. New number, new tone, same old manipulation. We saw your article. Proud of you. Let's get dinner, just us. No pressure, just reconnect. I stared at that message for a full hour. Proud of you. From the man who told me I was too selfish to be a part of the family, still a small part of me. Some bruised little corner in my heart hoped he meant it. Hoped maybe, just maybe they had changed. So I agreed. We met at a sleek Italian place in downtown Austin. He was already seated wearing a blazer too tight for his ego and a smile that didn't touch his eyes. The first 10 minutes, small talk. He complimented the restaurant, asked if I was dating, told me Mom said hi. I didn't ask which mom, because I knew he didn't mean mine, just his Barbara. The woman who had called me the disappointing investment once when she thought I was out of earshot. Then came the pivot. He leaned in, dropped his voice low. Look, I'll cut to it. We're launching a digital platform, coaching, motivation, all that. You've built something inspiring and viral. We thought maybe you'd be open to licensing the content. You write, we publish. Full credit to you, obviously. I blinked. He kept going. And we could fold it into the family name, elevate it, bring it mainstream, like a redemption arc, the daughter who rose above, you know. And if things go well, we bring you back into the foundation. Could be big, for all of us. I felt it like a punch to the ribs. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted brand equity. They saw what I built, what they threw away. And now they wanted to package it, polish it, and slap a family logo on it like nothing ever happened. You're trending, Emma, he said. Why not let us help you go further? Help me. As if they hadn't tried to bury me. I didn't speak for a moment. I just stared at the glass of red wine I hadn't touched. Then I asked calmly, would this be before or after the cease and desist your firm sent? He paused, blinked. Tried to recover. That was a misunderstanding. Legal's just doing their job, right? So is mine. I stood up, dropped enough cash to cover the check, looked him straight in the eyes and said, I don't need your platform. I am the platform. And then I walked out, didn't look back. But I knew that wasn't the end. Because 2 weeks later, something changed. It started subtle LinkedIn connections from their advisors, DMs from PR firms asking if I was open to ghostwriting. Then a screenshot landed in my inbox. Someone from their upcoming legacy project had shared a pitch deck with a title that made my stomach twist, Reclaiming the Prodigal Daughter, a family's journey to reconciliation. I wasn't consulted. They were already trying to tell my story. And the worst part, they had included photos, old ones, from high school. Me with braces and a busted ponytail in the same family who would later throw me out like a bad receipt. I wanted to scream. Instead, I lawyered up. Thanks to the traction from the Medium post, I had a pro bono offer from a civil rights nonprofit that specialized in digital rights and storytelling abuse. They sent a cease and desist of their own, and this time they backed down. But they didn't disappear. Because at the next quarterly conference, hosted by a Fortune 500 think tank, I was invited to speak. Topic: Narratives of Resilience. When family isn't your first advocate, guess who showed up in the back row, Michael, and Barbara, not to clap, not to learn, but to watch. And when I looked up during my closing line, I locked eyes with them as I said, the people who underestimated me didn't realize I wasn't just rebuilding my life. I was reclaiming the power they thought they erased.